Everyone, my name is Hope, and let me tell you a little bit about myself since this is my first appearance here. Actually, my second appearance at any left-hand path thing. So let me explain a little bit. My name is Hope. I've been Michael's partner for over 10 years now. I am one of the owners at the Luciferino Apotheca. I'm a member of the TOPH and the GCOL, which we just decided that my role would be as a strategic advisor for the church. So I'm kind of more of a background person most of the time. So you probably won't see me up here that much. But anyway, I wanted to talk a little bit about Luciferianism at a basic level. And I know probably most of you and probably all of you are way past that. But I figured that maybe it would be nice to have some talking points for people who were wanting to talk about what it means to be a Luciferian, or to be able to talk with people who were interested in what a Luciferian is and what it's all about. So I actually created a couple documents, and the first one is how to identify a Luciferian. And the difference is basically between a Luciferian and a dogmatic religion. So for the first one, we have a Luciferian is a maverick. They are an independent thinker, and they question everything. Whereas in a dogmatic religion, they would be a conformist, which believes in the established beliefs and practices without question. An achiever is the second one for Luciferian. A Luciferian achiever is driven to do things for the satisfaction of achieving things that make your life and those around you better. We like to do things because we want to do them. I put slave, I know that's kind of a strong word in the dogmatic religion, but the reason is because if you read the definition of what slavery is, it's very similar, not exact, but very similar. You're influenced to achieve for some other controlling force as a way to gain favor, love, or reward. Luciferians are non-dogmatic. Your beliefs, your opinions, your principles are not absolute. And it's okay for others to have different opinions, beliefs, and principles. In a dogmatic religion, they are dogmatic. Their opinions, beliefs, principles are laid out as incontrovertible truth. These truths are true for everyone, and no one and no thing can prove otherwise. Accountable and independent. Luciferians are accountable and independent to themselves, and all is found and achieved within the self. In a dogmatic religion, the opposite would be unaccountable dependent. Some other supreme being or evil being is responsible for your destiny and your life achievements. You can only achieve this destiny through this being, and when you need something, you would ask this being to help you, or when something's gone wrong, then that would be blamed on the forces of some evil being or force. Self-reliance. Luciferians are self-reliant. They take care of themselves, and they understand the concept of survival of the fittest. Whereas in dogmatic religion, it would be dependent. Believe that the meek shall inherit the earth, and the strong shall be punished by some other supreme being. And when we say strong, we're not talking about necessarily when we say strong and athlete, we're talking about, for example, those who, rule, those who are in charge, those who have, make the rules for the others. And that's kind of how certain religions were based on, that they would get something and that those others would be punished in the future. Intellectual. Luciferians question everything and do not take anything at face value. Whereas in dogmatic religion, it's faith, belief in something even when it cannot be proven. Questioning and seeking knowledge outside of the dogma is considered bad. If you think of specifically Christian, because that's what I grew up with, and that's what I know the most about. If you think of something like that, think of Adam and Eve and, the forbidden fruit from the tree of knowledge. It was meant to keep them from knowing things. And whereas in a Luciferian, we believe that we should know things, that we have a need and a want to know things. And there's nothing wrong with that. Tolerant. Tolerant Luciferians are accepting of others who are different or who think differently. That's okay with us. It's okay to have a discussion. You can be, think one way and we can think another, and that's completely okay. Whereas in a dogmatic religion, there's intolerance. There's that push to try and change or judge or criticize those who are different, who don't agree with their dogmatic principles. Strength. Luciferian shows strength. They'll meet force with force when necessary. Whereas in a dogmatic religion, there's weak, which will turn the other cheek when force is applied. And then the last one for Luciferian is the belief that there is no good or evil, light or dark. They cannot exist independent of one another. Whereas in a dogmatic religion, it's unbalanced. The belief that good and evil, light and dark, are independent of one another. You can either be good or evil. You can't be both. So that is the paper on how to identify a Luciferian. So when you're thinking about that, you should be thinking, well, am I a Luciferian? That would be the next question. If somebody was talking to you and asking you, what does being a Luciferian mean? Would be, am I a Luciferian? So this part actually is taking the same words that we just went through for the Luciferian side and giving more of a definition to each. So these would be Luciferian traits. Number one, again, the maverick. Luciferians are independent-minded people who see things in a way that often go against the grain of the majority. If you've ever been called unorthodox or a nonconformist or a free spirit, you might be Luciferian. And you question everything. As an achiever, because that's the number 2 trait, Luciferians have an internal fire burning within that drives you to do more, to achieve more. You like to be challenged, and you're not satisfied unless you see the challenge through to victory. You and you alone must earn your place in this world. You know that you have a job to do in this, on this earth, and you're going to make that happen. Whatever it is, it could be, learning something new. It could be, being a part of the church and helping out. It could be whatever, you think, but it has to be a drive to continuously look for things to achieve, to do new things, and you just always are looking for that next thing. Non-dogmatic. While Luciferians are independent thinkers and certainly have opinions, and many have very different opinions from one another, as a Luciferian, you recognize and understand that your opinions and beliefs and principles are not absolute. Luciferians are flexible, and as your knowledge base grows, your opinions, beliefs, and principles will also evolve. I'm sure that if you think back to when you were a child, the things that you thought and believed in then are not the same as what you feel and believe today. And that will continue throughout the rest of your life. We also recognize as a Luciferian that it's not necessary for everyone to have the same opinions, beliefs, and principles. Number 4, accountable and independent. Luciferians believe that there is nothing outside of the self. Therefore, you are God of your world. Everything is within your power, and you are responsible for your life's failures as well as credited for your life's successes and victories. There's no one to go out and say, give me this, and there's no one to blame when something happens that is a negative force in your life. It's something that you control yourself. Self-reliant, Luciferians are confident in their ability to take care of themselves and expect others to do the same. As a Luciferian, you certainly will help people that cannot help themselves, and there is a difference between those who cannot help themselves and those who can help themselves. But even when we help care and take care of those who are who can't help themselves, you and your family's needs come first. That's the first thing, kind of like when you're on the airplane and they say take the thing down and put it on your neighbor or your kid or your mom first. You have to take care of yourself before you can help and take care of others. And a Luciferian understands that. However, we also understand that the world is survival of the fittest, and that you can help those who, you help those who can help themselves, people who are able, but maybe aren't willing or don't, have the necessary tools at the time. But we help them by giving them knowledge and tools in order for them to do it on their own, not taking care of them or doing it for them, because as a Luciferian, you'll recognize that this will make them weak. 6 is intellectual. Luciferians like mental activity that is brought forth through study, thought, and introspection. You are always seeking ways to increase your knowledge base and challenge your thought process. You do not take anything at face value, and you research and explore all possibilities to find the truth. Kind of going back to, questioning everything. It's important to conformist. So for example, we say we're nonconformist, but if you want to look at it from a Luciferian perspective, if after you did all of your own thinking and research and all of that, you still felt that you agreed with the mainstream, then that's not really being a conformist. You're still a Luciferian because you have questioned, you've tested, and you've researched all possibilities and ended with the possibility that fits you. So even if you like something that is mainstream, it doesn't mean you're a conformist. It still means you're a Luciferian as long as you have done all of those things from an intellectual perspective. Tolerant. Luciferians do not hate or judge others for being or thinking differently. You find the common ground that allows you to respect others, and we do not attack other religions, principles, or beliefs without direct provocation. Strength. And actually, I wrote something on the way here to kind of change the strength one a little bit. So we're going to call it strength and strategy. Luciferians are confident and show courage when others do not. You do not use this strength to persecute others, but you also do not turn the other cheek. You stand your ground and you'll meet force with equal measure and beyond when necessary. But as a strategist, Luciferians take the time to think and plan before they speak or act. And as I said earlier, when necessary, it's not always necessary to strike back. But we know that in order to be in the survival of the fittest, that if we have to, then we will meet force. It also, in the strength part, is also the courage to break free from everything you've ever known in order to find truth. Many of us didn't come here from, I don't think anyone in here was born into Luciferianism. There wasn't anybody that was raised as a Luciferian. Anybody? No? And I wasn't. So it is very difficult when you're first starting out to try to break free from what everybody else has always told you, everything you've ever learned, everything you've ever known, and to be different. It's scary. But it's necessary, and that is a huge part of Luciferian strength. And then the last one is balance. Luciferians believe that all things are balanced in both light and dark. The light cannot exist without the dark, and vice versa. Good and evil, light and dark, are together in everything and everyone. And therefore, the concept of good and evil, light and dark, do not exist. They are both necessary and based on individual perception. Good example I always use when I'm talking to somebody about this concept would be war. war is something that nobody necessarily wants. And something that I would think is disastrous for many people. However, sometimes out of all wars, good things also come. It's the same thing with good things. So, for example, with the war, going back to that though, in the United States, if we never went to war with Britain, we would still be under British rule. But we did, and we gained our independence, and that, for an American, is a good thing. We feel good about that. On the other side, when you look at good and bad, it could be, a great thing that we are building, I don't know, let's say a new place for homeless, a new homeless shelter, let's say. That's a great thing. And how could we possibly find any bad in that? However, depending on where the land is put and where the house is built, or the housing place is built, could be a bad thing for whoever owned it, for the animals that might have lived there, for many different things. So again, it's really based on perception. It's whose eyes you're looking through as whether or not something is good or bad. So therefore, they cannot exist. There's no such thing as good, bad, or good and bad. They are not independent of one another. They are always together. And the one last thing that I'm going to say today is I wanted to say one thing. I said at the beginning that this is only my second appearance. And one of the reasons that is, this is the first one on an internet appearance. I also appeared at the Left Hand Path conference, but was that one of the reasons that is for me, and I'm assuming that if it's that way for me, it's probably that way for a lot of you, is that the reason is because of the fear of persecution, the fear of, people identifying me as a Luciferian and then, what do you want to call it, blackballing me from whatever, or my friends or family not wanting to talk to me, or whatever that might be. But I want to say, and I want to challenge each one of you, that the only way that we are going to change perception is to talk about it, to talk about these things and be able to explain these things easily to other people. So my challenge to all of you and to you here is that the next meeting that we have for the GCUL, I would challenge each of you to pick somebody who matches these traits that you see here as a Luciferian, and obviously they have to match these traits. If they're not open-minded and tolerant, then they're not matching the traits. But if they match the Luciferian traits, to bring them to the next one, so that we can all talk about it and have a discussion, and they can hear a little bit more about what we are, and they can tell us what, their questions and stuff are. And then when someone asks them about their friend or family member that's Luciferian, they'll be able to explain it as well. So I'm going to challenge that each one of you out in Viral Land and here at the GCUL actually bring somebody who matches that trait root and to the next meeting. All right? Thank you.
Today I'm going to talk about, because it is Good Friday, I'm going to talk about Jesus, which I'm sure many of you are excited about. So I'm going to speak as if Jesus was a real person, that he actually was born and he lived and then he died. And I'm not implying divinity or anything beyond that. The big concept with Luciferianism is that in darkness and light, they're really balanced. Much what Hope talked about and Jacob mentioned, and that there is no absolute extreme in of itself. And how I'm going to describe this is that you have to look deeper into specific things to understand how they work in nature and how they work within humanity. Those are very important things, because then you'll have a different perspective that isn't based around good or evil or one extreme or the other. So what I'm going to talk about is the situation of Jesus at the time of his life, and how this can be understood from a Luciferian perspective. So, in the ancient Near East, cycles of death and resurrection are common. And we see that first with the Canaan gods, Baal, who in the cycle of nature went into the underworld for a season and then came forth bringing rains and storms and things which affected in a positive way the farmers and the people that lived in the region. We have Melkart of Tyre, who was the kind of Phoenician Heracles, who was worshipped after death and deified into a undying god who would sort of transform into Baal Shemem in the region, the old god of the natural order. He would die and be resurrected as the youthful hero. This was really during the time after the death of Jesus. Would have been one of the first individuals that a religion was based around in that sense. The bottom line, or the foundation, is that Jesus was a Judean rebel. You see this with the names of his disciples, Judas, and all of those. His ministry appealed to country dwellers and people who were disaffected with the ruling Hebrew priesthood. During the time of the Romans and their kind of conquering of the ancient Near East, a lot of the traditional Hellenistic kings were removed, and through war, famine, and just general bad conditions, the Romans started to set up their own structures. These structures were different than the Hellenistic kings after Alexander the Great, and they took away slowly the culture of the local people. And in doing that, they imposed their own values, and this caused issues. King Herod, he was a Hellenistic Judean king, who was actually one of the last of what would be considered great Near Eastern rulers. But his authority was undermined at certain times by rebels that would sprout up in this area. This goes all the way back to the Maccabean revolts. The type of wandering mystic that Jesus was is not in any way unique to him. Around the same period of time, there was several different traveling mystics. And what these guys do is they go around, offer or perform miracles to some degree, all unverified. You can't really validate it. We're going off legends that we read now. Apollonius of Tyana, who was what would become a Neo-Pythagorean, who venerated the Greek gods, actually did this. There's records of his existence, probably more so than Jesus. And remember, Jesus, you know about him just from a lot of myths. But like I said at the beginning, we're going on the assumption that he was a real guy. These wandering mystics performed miracles. They healed people. They, some cases, rose the dead. Some would astral project into other regions at the same time. Apollonius is one of those that would claim these powers. Jesus did this with Yahweh's authority, or what he considered to be Yahweh's authority. This type of wandering prophet was harmful to the Roman Empire because they would take away the authority of the, specifically for the lands of Judea, the Hebrew kings, or the priesthood, who their priesthood meant power for them and their ruling class. His teachings upset that, and it also upset the stability that the Romans were trying to achieve. Now, you might think, what makes a traveling mystic? And it's something to think about, is, as I said, the Roman occupation, wars and removal of local kings. The Roman culture and authority was really imposed on different lands, and these people felt disattached. A lot of the poor people became poorer and more destitute over in that time. And what these traveling mystics did was they gave power to the individuals or the people with whatever they were selling them at the time. And it doesn't really matter, but it appealed to them that they would have a better life beyond after they died. The myth of the birth of Jesus is not unique to Jesus, being born of a deity and a mortal. We see this going all the way back to Alexander the Great, who was the claimed to be son of Zeus Ammon. Ptolemy I of Egypt, Seleucus Nicator of the Seleucid Empire, was the son of Apollo. Demetrius the Besieger was of Poseidon and Aphrodite. We see that because a lot of times they claim these traits because it was based on what they were doing at the time. It gave legitimacy to their kingdoms and the rule that they were imposing. Obviously, all of the things with the individual known as Jesus was within his own power a political move for him. And why would I even speak about this on Good Friday, and not necessarily in a negative way? This is an example of how important it is to research what it is that people put their beliefs into. If someone asks you, do you believe in Christianity or whatever it is, if you're forced into that type of conversation, you might say, well, no, I don't believe in it. If you're a black metaler or a death metaler, you would probably show them your t-shirt and they'd go away. But if you actually have to have a discussion on it, it's good to know the history, and it's good to know that there are underlining things that really add up to make the situation happen. It's not a black and white thing. It's very important to know these things, especially with your holidays that you're forced to endure in a social setting. So, with that said, Luciferianism, as you're going to see coming up within a month, or I might be speaking out of turn, within that time frame, we're going to publish the philosophy book on Luciferianism, and it's going to contain writings from all of the founding and core leaders of the GCOL. And we're answering a lot of those questions that Hope spoke to tonight, and that Jacob speaks about, that I speak about, Jeremy speaks about. And we're going to publish this in a way that is devoid of a magical setting, just merely on the philosophy. So if you're asked, what is it to be a Luciferian, you'll be able to speak to it very clearly and know in your mind what you are and why. Those are very important things. So that's coming up for the church very soon, and we will definitely publicize that in due course. So thank you for watching tonight.
So with that, we'll close out this meeting for this evening. Thank you, Hope and Michael, for your time tonight, and that'll be it. So Thank you.